Again, I would like to welcome you. We'd like to welcome you to our first Thursday event, the first Thursday of July. We hope that everyone had a very happy Independence Day. It is very good that you're here. Thank you so much for joining us. Our event tonight, the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, is presenting Overcoming Roadblocks for the Disabled in Florida. And we have a wonderful presentation tonight. We have two key speakers. First is Alison Holmes. She's an advocate for disabled people. Our other speakers would be Katherine, Kat Magnoli. She's an activist, author, commentator, and Miss Wheelchair of 2017. Also, we have a special VIP speaker, J.J. Holmes. He'll be joining us a little bit later. But our program tonight is going to be looking at the issues that face people who are disabled. In any society, we want to equalize things. We want to give people opportunities. We want to educate our children. We want to help people that need health care. We also like to provide an even playing field for folks that are disabled. If you can't hear, we want to make accommodations. Same thing for people that can't see. If you're in a wheelchair, we'd like to be able to, so that you could go to work or so that you can get medical care, that you can live a normal life, at least as normal as possible. And what we have found is that here in the state of Florida, hurdles have been thrown down before disabled people year after year after year, and it has been a great challenge for our state, for our citizens, people that care, to help fix that. So we have some really interesting stories tonight, and hopefully everybody will learn something. Hopefully it'll broaden your horizons a little bit about this issue. And we are so glad that you're here. And frankly, we're going to ask our speakers, if they can, to have an action item or two, something that you as a viewer can do, maybe something that you can do to make the world a little bit better. A little better place for all of us. Well, first, before we get going with our program, as always, we have a little bit of business to get done, a few items that need to be done for the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. And what I'd first like to do is to welcome our president, Karen Houston. Karen, you have the floor.
Hi, Phil, and everyone. Thank you so very much for being here this evening. We hope that this is going to be a wonderful program. It certainly is something that we all need to learn more about. And I'm very thankful for everyone, to everyone who's here tonight. I want to thank Vicki and Poco, Jan Moran, and the whole entire Action Projects Committee for putting on these monthly programs. It takes a lot of work, and it's meaningful, and it gets the information out into the community that needs to get out into the community. Our next event will be about rewriting Black history in Florida. And it may not be the exact title, but it's going to be about that. How the Black history they've been trying to erase Black history and all sorts of things here in Florida. So that's going to be Thursday, August 3rd. And in the meantime, you can check out our website at scpaflorida.com. That's SCPA Florida spelled out, FLORIDA.com. And to get you better, hopefully to get you to join us, hopefully, I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer, Carol Becker, who's going to give you a little more information about memberships and contributions. We welcome you into our wonderful organization and hope that you'll consider joining us.
Hi, my name is Carol Becker. I'm treasurer of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, and you can find our website at scpaflorida.com, where you can join our group if you are so inclined. You can join by using your credit card, or you can, if you don't want to do that, you can mail a check. The address is on the site, but it's SCPA PO Box 412, Melbourne, Florida 32902. If the dues are $25 for an individual membership, $35 for a family membership, $10 for student, and I believe that's it.
And Carol, if I can throw in a word, I know that we've been offering new members an opportunity to get a free T-shirt. I don't really have all the details on how that works, but I know that when you do join SCPA for at least the rest of this year, that that I'm aware of. We've got a couple of really nice T-shirts that are a wonderful opportunity to show your support for SCPA. And I don't remember the details. Do you have more details on that?
I do not. I think Barbara may be the one with
Well, anybody that's submitting
Actually,
membership,
it's Bonnie.
Bonnie. Okay, Bonnie.
Yeah.
anybody that's submitting their membership, we'll get some details from you regarding your size, your preference, and we'll make sure that you get a T-shirt. So that's an important little perk for those who are joining our organization. And back to Karen.
Thank you, Phil, and thanks, Carol. Excuse me. Phil spoke about action items when he first started, and those will be recommended by panelists. And we ask you to please take action. Every month we have these wonderful programs, and people are bringing this to our wide community. So if we don't take action on something from these programs, we're not learning anything, we're not sharing anything. So please, the action items will be recommended by our panelists, and please take heed and take action. And so back to you, Phil. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you so much, Karen. We also, as a tradition here at the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, like to give a little bit of time to others in our community, allies who have announcements of community activity. If anybody is interested in making an announcement, please use the technology. Here on Zoom, you have, whether you're using a phone, an iPad, or a laptop, whatever kind of computer you've got, there's a little button somewhere that says reactions. You click the reactions button, and then it'll have a little hand raising. You can raise your hand. We'll give you a minute to make an announcement of what your events are. There's several upcoming events. If you haven't been to our website at www.scpaflorida.com, check that website out, and it has a little schedule of local events as well. But if anybody wants to make an announcement of their upcoming events, please do raise your hand using the reactions button. I would like to for those of you who have just joined us, like to remind you that you right now are on the Space Coast Progressive Alliance First Thursday event for the month of July 2023. It's called Overcoming Roadblocks for the Disabled in Florida. And we've got two wonderful speakers that are about to begin, and we are hoping to see if we have any other community announcements. Haven't seen anybody yet raise their hand. And we may be going once, going twice. If nobody has a community announcement, we may
Larry.
just move on. Larry Abdullah, perhaps?
Well,
there you are, Larry.
Since you didn't have any, the fellowship, the Pineda Fellowship, is having a talk Sunday about DeSantis versus Disney. And that is certainly an interesting and maybe even somewhat entertaining topic these days, because I think our governor is looking bad. So anyway.
And Larry, can you give us the details? Where can people find out more information?
Yeah, thank you. It's at 10:30 in the morning. And I'll have to give you the address of I wasn't really planning on giving it this announcement. 10:30 Sunday morning at the Pineda, Friendship Fellowship of Pineda, but I have to look up the address.
It's on US 1, just north of the Pineda Causeway, and
on the left side of the street, and they have a big sign. It's actually north of Suntree Boulevard on the left side of the street, and they have a great big sign. So you don't need the address. Just, if you're coming from the south, and that is, kind of an interesting topic these days.
Do you have a website or a Facebook page where people can go?
Yeah. I wasn't really planning.
But it sounds like an interesting program, and we certainly like everybody to be able to access that if they're interested.
Yeah. Just a second. Yeah. I'm sorry, I wasn't really prepared.
Larry, do you know how to use the chat?
It's Friendship Fellowship. Okay, here it is. I just brought, oh, wait. No.
Larry, do you know how to use the chat? Can you make that entry in the chat room so that everybody that's on Zoom
No,
can see it?
I just found the webpage
Okay,
and I'll put it in the chat.
excellent.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much, Larry. We appreciate that. Is there anybody else that has a local community announcement? Don't forget to mute yourself once again. Thanks, buddy. Anybody else that has a community announcement? I think we're going to just proceed. Well, everybody, again, our program tonight, Overcoming Roadblocks for the Disabled in Florida. You know, one of the things that we like to remind people is that everybody deserves a fair shot. But here in Florida, it's a rather remarkable statistic. So I'm going to read it to you. It's currently thousands and thousands of children. I believe the number currently is 22,000 families with disabilities in Florida have been waiting for years, sometimes more than a decade, for access to basic services like physical therapy and medical equipment. And Florida's waiting list for Medicaid waivers, again, 22,000 people are waiting. Some children will die before they get the help that they need, and this is unacceptable. There are many other issues that you might think about. You know, before the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA was passed. If you were in a wheelchair, you might not be able to get on a bus. You might not be able to get on a school bus. You might not be able to find a hotel room where you can actually get through the door. If you're blind, you might not be able to read the signs when you go shopping. You know, there are things that the average person might not even think of that are obstacles that are daily placed in front of people with disabilities. So what we'd like to do tonight is to hear from a couple of folks who have faced those challenges and generally have been able to overcome them. One of the most amazing things that happens when you hear people's stories is that you find that as tough as it can be, many people find a way. Those people in my book, I would call heroes. I think they're people that really, they fight the fight, not just for themselves, but for other people. They're trying to help other people. And that's very, very important that you hear their stories and that maybe you can find some way that you can help them as well. So our first speaker tonight, Alison Holmes, she's an advocate for disabled people. She has a very interesting story. Her son, JJ Holmes, has cerebral palsy, and he's going to actually be talking to us a little bit later in the program. But Alison will go first. Then we'll hear from Katherine Magnoli, who's an advocate, an activist, author, commentator, and Miss Wheelchair 2017. First, let's open the floor to Alison Holmes. Welcome, and you've got a round of applause from everybody here. Please tell us your story, Alison.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for shining a spotlight on this to Space Coast Progressives. I am so appreciative that we're getting the chance, because JJ is one of the 22,400 and whatever on the wait list, and he's been on it for 16 years and counting. So it's pretty bad. I'm going to kind of back into this with how we started, because we've been up to Tallahassee quite a bit recently, but we started with this because JJ's favorite day in his whole life was going to a Trump rally, which and if he could relive any day out of his whole life, it would be that day, which is pretty bizarre. But when he was 11 in 2015, he saw Donald Trump mocking a journalist with disabilities. And he was saying to me, I want to go to a Trump rally and protest. And I was like, no, that's not what you're going to do. So he went on and on about it, especially because there was a lot about the Trump rallies.
Alison, it sounds like you may have been muted, and I'm not exactly sure how. If you could unmute yourself again, it just happened just a moment ago.
Oh, okay.
You are back. You're back.
All right. So I said no, he couldn't and because I knew Hillary was going to be president anyway, so what did it matter? And he went on, and gradually the rallies, the violence at the rallies seemed to calm down. Right before the election, November the 5th, one popped up in Tampa. So I said to him, and in fact, President Obama was coming the next day to Kissimmee to stump for Hillary Clinton. And I said, let's go to that one. No, he wanted to go to the Trump rally. And I said, it would mean getting up really early in the morning, we'd have hours to wait. He said, nope, this is what he wanted to do. He was adamant. And so we woke him in the middle of the night to get up, which normally he's not interested in. He was determined he was going to go through there. He sat there for hours. And before we went, he said to me, will Trump say, get him out? Will the crowd chant USA? And will I be on CNN? And I said, no, no, and no. And if that's what you're doing it for, there's no point, because that's, and he said, no, I want to make a stand in my wheelchair. So I said, okay, this is, I've never seen, he types with his nose on his iPad. He would type and search for rallies. How far away is Melbourne? How far away is this? So anyway, we went through. He hit, when we got inside, I was thinking, okay, this is not a good idea. It was pretty horrendous. They were turning around to the press on the risers and CNN sucks and all this sort of thing. But we stayed, and when Donald Trump came out, JJ he used to type on a communication device down here and hit it with a switch. So he started typing something, and I thought, he's going to say, I don't want to do this. And I was thinking, thank goodness, because I don't want to do this. And he typed out, here goes nothing. So I thought, okay, but I still thought, I mean, it's a communication device. Nobody's really going to hear it. Well, they did. And then Donald Trump spotted it, which is what actually got the crowd going. So then everybody started booing. So then they started chanting USA. So JJ was thrilled with that. That was right, check box number one. So then Donald Trump yells, get him out. So it was like, but we actually didn't hear that because the crowd was yelling so much. And what we heard afterwards was he said, oh, you can't even hear the person. My people make all the noise. So we got taken out by security, and a journalist there who saw what happened, and her sister has special needs, and she was really upset by what happened, little knowing he was thrilled with the USA stuff. And we didn't know anything else at that point. So when we watched afterwards, we saw that he'd said get him out. So that was great. She reached out to people who were in Hillary Clinton's campaign and got in touch with somebody, and they said we could go to the Obama rally the next day and be in this sort of VIP bit. So of course, he was delighted with that. And then at the very last minute, we got pulled out to meet President Obama. So JJ, 12 years old, said, can you vote? Because he wanted to make sure that he could vote for Hillary Clinton. And got pictures of that. Then the next day it was on CNN. So JJ's third wish came true. So of course Gary doesn't listen to anything I say because he doesn't believe that I know what I'm talking about. So it was in Washington Post, the story, and it was, but then of course waking up the next day, and I didn't know how to tell him that Hillary Clinton had lost, and I was dreading what was coming. Then they started trying to overturn the ACA, Obamacare. So there were Trump protests everywhere at that time. We could barely move, especially around Orlando, which is where we live near Orlando. So we joined them. We joined in things with rallies to save the ACA. Marco Rubio was at a fundraiser, so we bought tickets and went in, and that was lesson number one for me, because we were told, just have just a few words planned out, shake his hand, because we paid the extra for the VIP picture with him. Shake his hand, hold on to his hand, don't let go, and just keep saying, you know, save the ACA, don't vote to overturn Obamacare. Well, we'd already met his regional director, so they knew, I guess, who we were in there. So we got taken out and we got time to speak to him. But I was standing there. JJ was putting stuff out on his communication device. We were very, very ill prepared. So from that point on, we have made no plans and just gone with it, because we didn't, it wasn't what we were expecting. But we actually did get the money back from the fundraiser. He did refund those tickets, and we were, when I saw it, we were called, actually not activists, not advocates, we were called agitators. That was in the description for our employment. So anyway, so things went on from there, and we did some sort of things, showing up in protests, and then gradually seeing with JJ, when he first went onto the wait list, it was going to be about 8 to 10 years that we were told. And then Rick Scott came in and just slashed that budget. So essentially, unless you were in a crisis, which is, I mean, a crisis, it's terrible. You did not get the waiver services. So in about 20 something years ago, Jeb Bush cleared the wait list. Now, there was a lawsuit which propelled him to do it, but it was still cleared. He said the state was a better place and made Florida a better place for doing it. And I agree. I don't think that anything's changed. And I mean, we're swimming in money in Florida. So if we can't find it this year, I don't know when we can find it. We are now 49th for funding the med waiver or I-budget waiver, it's called both. And there is really no end in sight now for him. 16 years, there is 7 categories. Most people are in category 7, which is under 21. That's it, you're just in there. Under 21, you're in category 7. We have the most people on the wait list out of every state. We have the most people. Virginia, which has about a little less than half our population, has about 3,000 people on their wait list. And their governor, he's saying, this is going to be fixed before the end of my term. And so he thinks, and that's 3,000 people. If they had a sort of comparable amount to Florida, it would be about 10,000. But with 3,000, he's saying this is unacceptable. We need to do something about it. Oklahoma, not exactly, you know, where woke lives and breathes, but Oklahoma said, no, we're not going to treat people with disabilities like this. They cleared their wait list completely. So people in Oklahoma, and again, it was not the size of Florida's, but in Florida, I mean, 16 years for JJ, and for somebody who needs to be fed, who needs to be bathed, who needs to be dressed, everything really. He types with his nose, and that's really all he can do. So it's my husband and myself who look after him. His little sister is 15, and she sometimes, you know, if my husband's working, I'll hold him under his arms, she holds him under his knees, and will sort of carry him somewhere. But if it was in a facility, somebody would be fired for doing that. But Florida is okay so long as they don't have to pay somebody to do it. I mean, it could be anybody coming in. They just do not care. So they're saying that they know that we're not going to say, okay, we're going to put them in a state-run institution unless we are at some death's door. So they're relying on the fact that we will continue for as long as possible. But his world is shrinking as he is stuck at home because we're just too worn out to take him out. couples who have children with special needs are more likely to get divorced than those with typical children. And again, physically and emotionally, there's so much put on you when you have somebody with disabilities. And then to add to it, to say, if you want to get the waiver in Florida, you are going to have to be, and the crisis that you have to be in is either a danger to yourself or to others, which is, I don't know that one. Caregiver unable to give care. And when we first asked about the crisis, and I said, well, I have herniated discs, and of course my husband needs carpal tunnel surgery. And they said, APD said, no, we're talking about terminal illness. And even if the illness is terminal, but you've got over 12 months, you don't move up on that. It has to be like imminent death is what they're talking about. Or the last thing on the crisis is if JJ's homeless. If he's homeless, they say, okay, then you'll get the waiver. And it's so funny to see, I don't know if it's Governor DeSantis or DeSantis or whatever, see him over in California, and he's wringing his hands about these homeless. Oh, this is terrible, he says. Look at these people, look at what's going on. Children are seeing this, he says, and they're taking drugs. He just spent a lot of his time fretting about these homeless in California. And yet what he's saying to my son is, if you want to get the waiver, which is just basic services, it's not some, it's things like, so we've had, Jeju wants to go to college in August. We had a real problem finding an aide to go with him. Just anything that he wants to do to get help in the house. There is no caregivers. If my husband and I are just too wiped out to do it, he's just out of luck. And so these basic services, Ron DeSantis says, if you want these services, you need to go out. You need to live with these people that I think is terrible in Florida. And then, and only then, perhaps we'll give you something. So sending one of the most, I mean, you wouldn't want to send your JJ's 19, you wouldn't want to send your typical 19-year-old out into people unhoused, and yet for him, this is the threshold that he wants to be met for JJ. And there's really no situation where a medical professional would say, you know what, wait until you get to a crisis and then we'll act. That's, well, hold on. Our Surgeon General, apart from him, then let's take him out, no other doctor would say, let's wait for a crisis, because you want to get in before that and get things sorted and before a crisis hits. A crisis is kind of the worst case scenario. For one of my friends, her son, she put him, phoned up to put him on the wait list, and she was saying, so how long would it be before he'll get services? And the man on the phone, he said, it's going to be years. He said, we've got somebody, she can only blink her eyes and she's still on the wait list. And my friend was shocked, and then she was starting to understand what we were saying about how it is in Florida, because you don't know. This is a sort of silent population who doesn't stand up. But people against masks, somebody said that 30 of them show up at a meeting and shake their fists, and it's reported everywhere. I mean, it's a huge upheaval to try and get people with disabilities to try and find a parking spot, even when you're going out to Tallahassee near the Capitol, is an ordeal in and of itself to try and navigate around Tallahassee. So it's a fairly silent population, which is why they'll do this. And her son would fall down and was eventually, he was taken to hospital, and they couldn't, because of his managed care, they couldn't find a respite place for him to go to, tried 34 places. She had just had her hip replaced. She was almost 80 years old. And the hospital said, you know, you'll have to take him back. And she said, you know, I can't cope with him. They said, you're going to neglect your son. Anyway, she went out, came home, and they brought him back and left him there. So they struggled on for just over a week, and Eric died. So that's somebody who now is not on the wait list anymore. They've gone down by one. But this is what's happening to people on the wait list. It's happening to kids with serious issues, and it's happening to adults as well. Fortunately, in our corner, Scott Maxwell, he has been amazing from the Orlando Sentinel, covering this and relentless. He started writing about this I think it was about a decade ago, and the first family I think he wrote about, the girl had Phelan-McDermott, I think that's how you say it, syndrome, which is a type of autism, very, very rare. So he wrote about this and saying how bad it was for her father, single father, and she wasn't getting services. So the legislators saw this and were, this is terrible. So you would think they're going to say, like even Glenn Youngkin says, Virginia, we've got to sort this wait list. No, in Florida, they said, you know what? What we're going to do is we're going to change it. So any child, which is like a handful in the whole country every year, who has Phelan-McDermott syndrome, they go straight on and get the waiver. They don't need to wait. So that's how they fixed it. They put no more money in. They took one child, put her, and got her waiver services because they know it's wrong. But they'll only do it if it's in their face. So there's, I think, about 35,000 Floridians with disabilities getting the waiver. There's almost 23,000 on the wait list, and the wait list is growing. So essentially, if it keeps going at the rate it's going, soon there's going to be more people waiting for services than there are getting services. And this year in Tallahassee, we went up and spoke several times, and there was 2 bills. The first bill is a pilot program for managed care, which it doesn't matter what they switch it to if they don't fund it. Funding is the problem. It's not the waiver in and of itself. However, managed care, of course, is going to be something that's, it's not really working in Florida. It works in other states, but not so much in Florida because they don't fund these sort of services. So that pilot program is going through, and they're trialing it, but they're taking people from the waiting list to try it. People from the waiting list are going to say, thank you for getting anything, instead of taking people from the waiver to give them an objective view. I don't think they want an objective view. So that was one of the bills. That's going to, I think, about 3 years now, the pilot program is going to go for. Initially, they wanted it to run for 1 year and wanted it all sorted by October. The second bill was our Senator, Jason Brodeur, and our Representative, Rachel Plakin, who were the sponsors. And that bill, one of the things it does is we shouldn't actually, we're probably breaking the law or something here by calling it a wait list, because it's actually now pre-enrollment category. So we all feel better now because we don't have a wait list. We are pre-enrollment. And to quote our Senator, Jason Brodeur, that we think you're going to need services. You don't right now, he says, but we think you're going to need services, so you're in pre-enrollment. So we're sitting there, and he knows, JJ. He knows the issues. We spoke in a delegation meeting in January, and at the end, when I spoke, I said, "So, would any of you commit to fully funding the wait list?" And he said, "I will." And then when we asked him to sponsor a bill to do with it, he said he didn't have the bandwidth. But at least we'll call it a pre-enrollment category now, anyway. So, thank you. I don't think it's the money for this. I don't know what it is, because as Scott Maxwell mentioned in his article, because I think was it that we can, or it's been said anyway, that we can fly people from Texas to Martha's Vineyard, and we can fly people from Texas to California, which, I mean, that would have paid a lifetime of care for JJ, for other kids on the wait list. But this is sort of what's important. And then there's another program they have, toll road relief for high toll road users. And that the money that they've using for that, about $500 million, with federal matching dollars, would have cleared the wait list. You could have taken every single person, almost, if not everybody, off the wait list if they use that money. Is it Joe Biden who says, you know, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value. And I really think that, you know, you look at Florida's budget and it sees, I mean, it certainly shows what they don't value, and they don't value somebody like JJ. He'll end up, if my husband and I die tomorrow, he'll end up in a senior living assisted with people with Alzheimer's and dementia. And my mother had dementia. She was in somewhere like that. It was a godsend, because I knew she was safe. We knew she wasn't setting fire to the house or letting people into the house who shouldn't be there. But that's not somewhere that JJ should be. That's not, he wants to live in the community. He's going to college. He wants to be a productive member of society. But instead, that if they wait until it's a crisis, they are going to sentence him to a lifetime in a facility. Somebody forgets to put on his iPad, he won't be able to speak. A lot of these places, they say that they're kind of lying in a crib all day. And I mean, it's easier not to lift him out than to do that. So, I mean, this faux outrage from Ron DeSantis about, you know, our children, you mess with our children, he says, talking about, you know, drag queens and donuts. He is furious that somebody does that, gives them a donut. However, he will sit back with JJ 16 years on a, I mean, it's incredible. If somebody had told me when we started 16 years later, we'd still be waiting with no end in sight, I would never have believed that. But I mean, there's just, we spoke to legislators, we've spoken to Kathleen Pasadolo on down, and they're all very pleasant, they're all very sympathetic, but essentially there is no energy to do anything. So JJ had said to me, oh, time to get real, you know, I'm going to go into an institution, let's call their bluff. And I'm like, I don't think so, but we're thinking of what he has said as a sort of, to show how crazy this situation is to see if we can find somewhere for him to be homeless, because it doesn't say you can't be homeless without your caregiver. So I could be with him, because supposedly, as soon as you're homeless, sister agencies, according to what they've said, kick in and start services. So we're thinking if we find somewhere, then that's the plan to test it out. And if it works and he gets the waiver, that's great. If it doesn't, I mean, we hope that maybe it will shine a light on, you know, there's our governor going to another state, bemoaning their homeless people, while saying to him, by the way, that's where you need to live before you'll get the waiver. And also, because we plan to go back up to Tallahassee and testify next year, if nothing else, to run, sort of give the crisis enrollment, or how they need 45 days apparently. So we are thinking if we find somewhere and can do it, that we're going to try doing this to try and get services for him, and to stand up for 22,434 other people, because, you know, they're out there in Florida. They're just mostly in their house, not able to get out, not able to do the things that they want to do, that everybody else just takes for granted.
3 more minutes, Alison. 3 more minutes.
Okay, I will. I'm. I thought I would struggle because in Tallahassee you've got 3 minutes, and then they tell you 30 seconds. So I'm really good at getting it down to 30 seconds, but apparently I'm also really good at going on and on as well. So that's just. I mean, thank you for doing this. Thank you for bringing attention to it, and just anything that shines a light on Florida's sort of dirty little secret is so welcome from our point of view. So thank you so much for listening.
Alison and JJ, you are getting a standing ovation from everybody here. We really, really want to hear your story. And JJ, we're going to be back with you in a few minutes after we hear from Kat. But it sounds extremely frustrating. It sounds incredibly frustrating how you can keep it together and tell us this story without crying. It's beyond me. It shows great courage and patience and commitment on your part. So we're with you. Thank you so much for that. For those of you that may have just joined us, you are with the Space Coast Progressive Alliance first Thursday event for July. It's called Overcoming Roadblocks for the Disabled in Florida. We've just heard from Alison Holmes. She's an advocate for disabled people, and her son, JJ. Our next speaker will be Katherine, Kat Magnoli. Kat is an activist, author, commentator, and Miss Wheelchair 2017. Kat, you have the floor. Please tell us your story.
Well, first off, I just want to say that Alison, you are a superhero. I write about superheroes, but you're living the superhero life. I mean, all that you're doing for your son is so inspirational, and I'm sure you inspired everyone on this call. So I just wanted to start with that. I have a mom who's equally a superhero as well. So I know what you guys go through just by seeing what she has to deal with. So that's number one. Number two, as I said, I currently live with my mother. I'm a person living with spina bifida, which for some of you that don't know, that is a birth defect that affects the spine. To me, it was described as a magical tree that has little nerves that help you move your arms and legs, and I'm missing some of my nerves. That's how it was described to me when I was about 4 years old. So throughout my life, I've been fairly independent. There are certain things that I still need assistance with, like cooking and driving. And my mother, first of all, I have to say why my mom's a superhero, because I'm not the only person that she takes care of. My mother also takes care of my elderly 99-year-old grandmother who lives in the town over called Hollandale. And she also handles a lot of things with my brother, who has his own set of difficulties and issues, and he lives independently. So she's basically back and forth between those two places, making sure that they're okay. And I basically do what I can for myself throughout the day. But there are many times that, I'll call her at like 6 o'clock at night and be like, Mom, I'm really hungry. Are you coming home so I can have dinner? Because, maybe she didn't prepare it earlier or something. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I got stuck, with your grandmother and so forth, or with my brother. And can you just, see what you can do? So a lot of the time I may just grab like an energy drink and that's my dinner. And my point in telling you this story is not for anyone to feel, sympathy for me, but in my personal opinion, one of the biggest flaws of the system for getting a Medicaid waiver is they look at someone in my position and they say, oh, she lived with her mom, she's okay. It's like, no, that's not always the case. You have to delve deeper and see what the family dynamic is, what's really going on behind the scenes, and maybe make an exception here and there. That's my personal opinion of one of the biggest flaws of why people either don't get on the waiting list or are on the waiting list for years, like JJ, and that's ridiculous to me. Another thing that, I've noticed is they look at a person's financial status and don't look at the person's condition. For example, I have a friend who recently passed away who had ALS, and he wasn't allowed to be on the waiver because he came from a wealthy family, and so he basically paid for all of his medical needs, including his aid and any medical equipment he needed, out of pocket. Flaw in that plan is, as you know, ALS is a progressive condition, and his needs became more and more expensive as his condition progressed. And so he was just, not him specifically, but like his family members were constantly trying to fundraise for him. Sometimes he would even, reach out to me and be like, can you help me? I need, financial support for this and that. And so again, the system, I understand there needs to be regulations and there needs to be rules, but I feel like there needs to also be like leeway and exceptions to each rule, because not everybody's situation is that clear cut. There's always something else going on that maybe the system is not really taking into accountability. So that's personally my opinion. Now, if we're going to get into the political realm of everything, I can say that I sympathize with the story that she told about Donald Trump, because when I was Miss Wheelchair Florida, I went to an event that's held every year in Orlando called the Family Cafe, which is a big event for people with disabilities. And on the first night, they have what's called the Governor Summit. And that year, we still had Rick Scott in office. And so they put me front row to go meet him. And I'm telling him all of my advocacy and what I'm planning to do as Miss Wheelchair Florida. And the man is silent. And then he looks at me and he's like, you're really pretty. And I was stunned, like stunned. I'm sitting there telling him that I want to fight for people with disabilities and that, we're not included in the anti-bullying law and all this stuff. And he just looked at me and that was his response. And so I sympathize with what happened with Trump, because I've had a similar situation, but in a very twisted and weird way. So honestly, I mean, when we get to the call of action, I'll tell you what I think is best for that part of it. But I just wanted to let her know that she's not alone in dealing with weird politicians that have very little manners. So also another story that I would like to share with you is that I have a friend who's now currently on the waiver, but he's a person with cerebral palsy. He can do very little on his own. Basically, all he can do is feed himself. Everything else he needs assistance with. And he was living with his father, who just recently died about 2 years ago. And his father was 74 when he passed. He had COPD. The last year and a half that he was alive, he was on an oxygen tank and all this, very difficult things for him to deal with. And in addition, he had to take care of his son. So that's another situation that I feel the system should have stepped in and been like, listen, your father can't take care of you. We're sending someone in. You're getting the waiver and that's it. No, he had to wait an additional 4 months after his father passed away to even get the waiver. So for the 4 months after his dad passed away, he had his cousin come from upstate Florida to like take care of him for those 4 months. So it's just, it boggles my mind how little people understand and that are in power of how important it is for people with disabilities to be included in society. It's really crazy to me. So yeah, and another thing, like going back to my situation with my mom, you know, I'm a person with a disability and I am an activist, as you said, so I'm sitting a lot in my chair. And for many of you who don't know, that creates what's called a pressure sore. And my pressure sore, I'm prone to them, and I currently have one right now. And because I'm not on the waiver, I can only get a nurse to come take care of my wound care once a week. The other 6 days, it's on my mom, and it's on her to get my medical supplies delivered. So it's really a messed up situation because, like I said, I'm majority of the time by myself, and I need that care every day, and it should not be on my mom after she just spent 12 hours out of the house taking care of other people's needs. She should have the right to, you know, lay down and go to sleep when she needs to. But I, you know, I'm like, wait, mom, you know, we got to do the wound care, or mom, I need you to help me with this. And like, it's just, it's so sad what what happens. And like I said, it just needs to be modified. There needs to be some sort of loophole to it. So that's really all that I wanted to share. I know that I have a full 30 minutes, but I just wanted to kind of give a brief about my situation and kind of shine a light on some of my friends that have dealt with issues, either not getting on the waiver or having a hard time getting on the waiver, even in an emergency situation. So, yeah.
Well, Kat, I'll tell you what, the opportunity to have a Q&A with our audience is coming up. And so we'll have probably a few good questions for you and an opportunity for you to perhaps expand a little bit more about things you've seen. Just as a matter of curiosity, is Lydia your mom by chance?
No, Lydia is my older sister. I'm the youngest of 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
I noticed that she has joined us, and that would be pretty cool to hear her perspective as well. But let's go ahead. Let's follow our schedule, and thank you again very much. Again, I think you'd have a standing ovation because people want to hear your story. And I actually, as I'm listening to you guys talk, I'm coming up with some of my own questions, but I'm going to wait for just another minute or two before we get to the Q&A. And so those of you that are also have questions, please start thinking about how you're going to be asking your question. We always encourage people, when you do have a question, not to make a statement necessarily, but please ask us a question and direct it to our audience or to our panel. And the way that you can ask questions via Zoom is to look for the little reactions button and then click that, and it should have a little thing where you can raise your hand, and those of you that have questions will be able to give you the floor and have you ask your question. We try to keep our questions to 3 minutes. But before we get to the questions, our schedule has us coming back to JJ Holmes. JJ, again, we heard the situation described by Alison, and JJ speaks through his iPad. And Alison, are you and JJ ready for JJ's presentation?
He is, yep. He's prepared it beforehand, so he's ready to go. Hopefully it'll
JJ, you have the floor. We are so glad that you're with us tonight, buddy. And please talk to us. Tell us what your message is.
Hi, y'all, and thank you for letting me speak here tonight. My name is JJ Holmes. I use he, him pronouns, and I am 19 years old. I'll be starting college in August to study political science. and have been stuck on Florida's red waiver waiting list for over 16 years. Years ago, people like me were forced into state-run institutions, and it wasn't until the Supreme Court decided people with disabilities have the right to live in the least restrictive setting possible, and we have the right to fully participate in community life. That things changed. But in Florida, if you're disabled, you don't automatically get your rights. You're put on a decades-long waiting list to get those rights, which is kind of ironic because Governor DeSantis says I live in the freest state. You know something? It sure doesn't feel free when Florida has the biggest budget surplus ever. It is 49th for funding the med waiver program. And Florida also has the most people waiting for disability services. If Florida really is the freest state, then every citizen, including Floridians with disabilities, should have the freedom to live their best life. I've already missed out on so many things in my life, especially all the social events during my senior year in high school, because I didn't want to go with my mom. For real, what senior would want to go to the prom with their mom? I didn't ever think I'd be waiting over 16 years to get help, and now I'm starting to worry about my mom and dad being able to continue caring for me as they get older. I constantly worry about something happening to them, and I worry about how much longer they can do this for. If something happens to them, and if I don't have a bunch of caregivers set up already, Florida is gonna force me into an institution for the rest of my life. You know, if I was a prisoner and Florida kept me isolated this long, it would be considered cruel and unusual punishment. But being severely disabled and totally isolated for 16 years on a disability waiting list is totally fine. When I was put on the waiting list for the waiver, George Bush was still president, and Barack Obama hadn't even announced he was running for president of the United States. Now was Governor DeSantis bragging about how free we are in Florida when so many people are waiting for disability services. If I don't get the waiver real soon, then I'm going to end up just being stuck at home all day with my mom. The highlight of my week will probably be going grocery shopping with her to Publix. I really hope I get the waiver soon, because for me, shopping at Publix is definitely not a pleasure. Thank you for listening.
JJ, that was a great presentation and actually quite thoughtful. And I want to speak for everybody here tonight to say how glad we are that you're here to share your message with us, to help educate us so that we learn not just about you, but about everybody else that's in this same tough situation. And I want to just add a personal thought. I think you should be very, very proud of your mom and your dad and those in your life who are taking good care of you and fighting the fight with you, standing with you to help represent all these other people. It's a funny thing that you talk about the fact that you are on a pre-enrollment program. Well, you know what? You're waiting on a pre-enrollment list, which sounds an awful lot like a wait list to me. The essence is so many people deserve to be treated better than this in this very wealthy state. The state of Florida is certainly capable of doing better than this. It is an embarrassment to all of us, to citizens or your fellow citizens of Florida, that our tax money is not being better spent. Now, we know that as a result of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also referred to as Obamacare, the PPACA, that the opportunity was given to all states to expand their Medicare capabilities, and that some states did that very easily. The money was provided, the opportunities were provided to provide better services to people that need them. The state of Florida has chosen over and over and over again to turn away from that for political reasons, to literally put citizens of the state's lives at risk. And we know, we've discussed before at SCPA programs, we've talked about the ACA and the
All right.
of it. But we've talked about the fact that this is something that needs to be done. I'm going to remind everybody to please be sure to keep yourself on mute. Please select mute if you would right now, so that everybody can speak. We're about to go into Q&A, and I'm going to ask you please to mute yourself, so that we don't have anybody else speaking over our questioners. We are going to do our Q&A momentarily, and I see we already have one person who has had his hand up for a while. He's actually been asking to speak on our chat board. And Daniel, I'm ready to hand the floor over to you. You are on the the wait. You're not on the wait list. You actually are receiving the waiver. Is that correct? And Daniel, can you put yourself off of mute? You are currently muted, Daniel. Trying to see if we can.
Okay.
There we go. We got you.
Okay, let me.
I'm Daniel Carvajal. I live in South Florida. I have CP since birth. I am lucky to have been in the waiver program, but I'm having trouble getting HHA workers. It took me 2 years to get a person to work with me. Nobody wants to work because of the electronic visit verification system, or EVV. This system was placed to cut down on Medicaid fraud. Let me explain. I have been without an HHA for the past 14 months. I live with my 80-year-old mom. She has a bad back and we are still fighting. I am also depending on my mom. I agree with JJ. Florida is a state in where we don't have a voice.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is very, very important to hear your story, Daniel. I'll tell you what, we have two panelists, I think, who can talk to our group and talk about your situation. I'm not sure who would like to pick this up first, Alison or Kat.
Can I?
You got
Can
it,
I go
Alison.
first? Daniel, wasn't it?
Yes.
Thanks. Thank you, Daniel, for speaking up, because and what he's saying is, and this is the problem as well, that Florida doesn't pay enough. There is, and as he said, I mean, you're going to make somebody, to get the waiver, you're going to make somebody in a crisis, and then 2 years it could be to get somebody, and it could be, I mean, people don't want to do this sort of thing. The last director, Barbara Palmer, was, she's now left. They have a new director in place, but essentially they've just tweeted the other day to thank the great governor for what he did. And until they're going to get real and actually say, one, we need to pay people more money for a job that is, I mean, it's, you can go into McDonald's and flip burgers and have no stress, whereas this is a job that, whether as a parent or a caregiver that you're paid, there's a lot of stress. I mean, you can, if something happens, you can go to prison for these kind of things. This is whereas, you know, in any other situation, you don't have the kind of level of care, the physical care. They support coordinators. You have to have a support coordinator when you're on the waiver. For almost 20 years, they did not give them a raise. And so this is you have to have it. It's written into statutes or something. So again, people were either struggling to find them, or they were just overwhelmed with their caseload. They wanted, they spoke about giving them a 20% pay raise this session. In the end, they got 10%. I mean, it is pitiful.
It's ridiculous. I agree with you. I want to get your email, but we could get in touch.
That's what he's asking, is if you could share your contact information with, I'm not sure how you would like to do that, but in a way that you can bring more people together and you can communicate together to be able to do that. Daniel, I know that you're on the chat, and I'm not sure, Alison, if you would like to put your contact information into our chat window, that might be helpful. And Kat, I see you've got your hand up, and Kat, maybe you would like to discuss this as well.
Yes, I would. I actually know Daniel personally. I've met him many years ago. We kind of stay in the same circle of friends and advocates. And I didn't actually, it's interesting how you could know someone for so long and not know their personal story. So I sympathize with him as well. Like I said, I have a mother that I live with that has a lot on her plate as well. And so it's an interesting story that we have in common. But Daniel, I want everyone to know that regardless of your CP, you are one of the most fierce advocates out here in South Florida. You're always trying to rally people together to protest things that you're passionate about. And you wrote a book too. I mean, I wrote a book, and and so did you. And your personal journey as a kid when you went to school. And I just wanted to give everyone a shout out about that and let them know how amazing you are.
And Kat, I'll tell you what, I believe that you said that you do have contact with Daniel, but I'll tell you what, if you are interested or willing to put your contact information in whatever way that would be best for you.
Yeah, definitely. I can put my email on the chat.
And that way you guys can work together. I know that we were talking the other day with the station manager at WFIT at Florida Tech, and she was very interested in having your contact information because she's interested in telling this story as well. And my hope is that by this kind of networking, the ability to bring people together who have common interests, who can help each other, who can support each other, we may be able to help with this fight a little bit. The Space Coast Progressive Alliance may be able to pitch in a little help as well. I'm not sure how. Hopefully tonight we're able to raise awareness and to get more people into the game with you. I'd like to ask a question, actually, while I have the opportunity, and this would be for both Kat and for Alison, and that would be, and JJ, and that would be, I don't know that I understand this business of Medicaid waivers. You know, the idea that Medicaid is a system that the states administer to help people that need assistance. In other words, folks that are homeless or folks that have medical needs or whatever. Why do you have to have a waiver? I'm not sure what a Medicaid waiver is, and why does that exist? Why isn't it just Medicaid that you would be part of the Medicaid program? Could either of you answer that question?
I can't answer specifically why there's a waiver, but I can tell you the things that it provides, which is obviously it provides health and wellness care around the clock. From what I've seen with friends that have it, they have someone come in early in the morning and maybe leave, for a couple of hours at night after they have dinner, and then they'll come back to help them get into bed. So it's based on your needs and it's based on what you need help with. So that's what it provides. The discrepancy that I've heard, even with people that are on it, is that, and I don't know if you know this, but Medicaid and disability, disability checks, they give you like a limit of how much you can earn on your own. So for example, like disability checks, you can only earn like 1,000 a month in addition to whatever your disability checks are. If you earn more than that, then they start deducting from your disability. Medicaid waiver has a different limit that you have. I don't know the exact number, but the point I'm trying to make is the people that are even on the waiver complain. They're like, I want to work, I want to make money, but these different services and these different government, checks and things that are coming into me, they're not in sync. They're not telling me the same amount. So what can I really do? If I make a certain amount, I'm going to lose this. If I make another certain amount, I'm going to lose that. So it's really almost in a way in their mind to keep them down and to keep them at poverty level. And so that's one of the things that I've heard from a lot of people. I talked to maybe 3 or 4 people yesterday that are on the waiver, and they're like, the biggest thing is that I don't know how much money I can make. Like, and I want to be independent. I want to go out and work. I want to be an entrepreneur. I have a friend who likes to paint. She uses the paint and the paintbrush in her mouth, and she makes beautiful paintings that she sells online. She's like, I can't make a certain amount if then I lose the waiver. So it's really all over the place. It's not like solidified. It's not cohesive with all the other services.
Alison, do you and JJ have insight on how to explain Medicaid and why it's called a waiver and that sort of thing? I see Daniel's raising his hand, but I'm going to ask Alison and JJ first if you guys could. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I haven't ever really looked for that. All I know is that it's supposed to, that you waive going into an institution and you say, no, I want to live at home. I'm not sure, because again, according to Senator Brodeur, that he says you're getting services already when you're on the wait list, which doesn't make sense, because if you were, why would we all be sitting on this wait list? So there are things like, for just now, death or almost death means he'll get home health care aid, whereas on the waiver you don't need to prove any of that. You just will get a home health care aid. But the nitty gritty, no, I don't know, and I should know. So I will be looking at that once this meeting's finished to figure out exactly that. So thank you.
You're welcome. And Daniel, I see Daniel, you got your hand up. Can you help us understand?
It's an addition. It's an addition to a Medicaid. They give you X amount of money every month to pay for services more than Medicaid itself.
So it's considered to be in addition to, or it's different from this basic Medicaid service. It's the waiver to give you an additional care level that's specific to your needs. Is that it?
Yes. If I may, Daniel, I just want to add to that. For example, like I said, I'm prone to pressure sores, but I can only get someone to come in once a week to do my wound care. If I was on the Medicaid waiver, I would be allowed to have someone every day doing my wound care, and it would no longer be my mother's responsibility.
Yeah.
So that's what it means to have the Medicaid waiver. It just gives you extra benefits of something that you might already be doing, but you can do it every day as opposed to just once a week.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm asking for further questions. If you have any questions of our wonderful panel, please do go to the corner of your app, whatever it is you're using, your iPhone or your iPad or your laptop, whatever technology that you're using, to click the reactions button and then raise your hand. And Daniel, I think you've already had your hand up. So Daniel, you can lower your hand. We have another question for our panel, for Alison and Kat. And it's coming in from Larry Abdullah.
Give us a little perspective on this. Do we know what the status of this waiver, because Medicaid is a national program. What is the status in other states? Is it a kind of a blue state thing, or do we have any idea which states have this waiver?
It's federal. It's throughout the country that has the Medicaid waiver, but there is a crisis here in Florida of over 22,000 people that have been waiting for years to get the waiver.
Can you
Still
confirm?
can speak? Because I can't raise hands, so would you recognize me when you finish with everyone else, please?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Karen, you can
Thank you.
count on it. And Larry, I think that the way that this is, if I can interject a little bit, it's a federal program, but it's administered by each state based on their own policies and their own laws. Lawmakers set the rules within the greater framework of the thing. And
Yes.
and I think one thing I think everybody has to understand is it's something that when I had this discussion with people, I hear this a little bit of confusion, and that is there's a big difference between Medicaid and Medicare. Medicare is an insurance program, also federally administered for older people generally, or there's special cases. Medicare is handled differently, but Medicaid is what we're talking about tonight, and Medicaid. And I think you probably already know that, Larry. But I tell you what, Alison, you had something you wanted to add, I think, you and or JJ, about this.
Just to say that it's federal, and they match dollars. I mean, you'll almost get the same money. However, it's optional. So Florida has said we'll leave them sitting on the wait list. And no, it's not really. I mean, California, interestingly enough, that Ron hasn't really focused on this, doesn't have a wait list. They don't have the budget surplus that we have, but they do not have a wait list because that's what they value. But Virginia is working on it, and not even on their worst day, they're not even close to the numbers that we have. And this is as well, thinking just over 20 years ago, Jeb Bush cleared it. So this was absolutely nobody on the wait list just over 20 years ago. So this is just built up over the 20 years, and frightening that they're about to overtake the people on the wait list, are about to overtake the people who are getting the waiver. So.
And I suspect that that's not an accident. It's not just happenstance. It is specific policy that was implemented under the two governors that you're describing, that and our legislature. It's the people that we elect that give us what we get. And we always say, here at the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, you have to be very, very careful of who you elect. And by the way, Larry, did that answer your question? That gave that knowing Virginia in the past 20 years in California. Yeah. Now I saw that Bonnie Ida had her hand up, but I don't see that hand up at the moment. So why don't I just ask Karen Houston, our president. Karen, you had a question.
I have a question and a comment. First of all, I have a niece, well, actually a nephew, her son, who has cerebral palsy. He was born weighing 1 pound 7 ounces. And he survived. He's a survivor. He just turned 18. He graduated high school, and a lot of things that you can't. He's not audible. He can't speak. He can't do anything for himself. And my niece has to do everything for him. And he also has a feeding tube. And she's still lifting and all that. And actually, I guess she's one of the people that has the waiver, but not a full waiver. I don't understand how that goes. But I do remember that they sent her a Hoyer lift that she can't use because it takes 2 people to use it. Those types of things. And then I see JJ with his I don't know what you call that he speaks through. But I see him and Daniel. And I see my nephew and think to myself, wow, I know he's in there, but he can't speak. And we don't know, what he's thinking most of the time. We know he enjoys music. We know certain things that he enjoys, but he can't speak. So one of the things my niece is overprotective because when he goes to school, she over protects him in everything that she does, And I see her struggle. I see your struggle, Alison. And I see the caregivers, you just don't know what they go through. And it's all out of love. If it weren't for you loving your son so much and everyone that loves, their children or whoever in the family, Katherine, whoever, it's all about love. And my niece now has a bad back because her and her husband are separated. He helps every once in a blue moon, they're divorced. They're no longer together, but he'll come by a weekend or so and help out. But she does get nursing care. So I'm assuming she does have somewhat of a waiver, but it's only like 3 days. And in the meantime, it's a break for her, but she doesn't take the break because she's always, when he has seizures daily, sometimes, I don't know how often during the day. So it's a complicated thing. I'm interested in the voice response here because I could look at my nephew all the time and I just know that he understands everything that's going on, but he can't speak and tell us what's going on,
Alison, can you tell us about that's an iPad that has an app that allows him to interface with it by touching his nose the same way that you might with your touching with your finger? Is that right?
Yeah, so he's typing away. It's a communication app on an iPad. So he's on Twitter, he's on Facebook.
Wow.
At school when he wasn't supposed to be. But then and if I walk in and he's messaging or texting somebody, it gets swiped up quickly. That nose is fast, believe me. So he's he has its Prolo Quo for text he uses, which is like just like a keyboard at the bottom, and then he can hit speak. However, there's picture-based ones. They started off with him where he had his device here. This is Donald Trump era, and he used a switch down at his left knee and would hit the switch. So it would scan through 4 quadrants and he would stop it. So if it was the keyboard, it could take him 5 minutes to produce a sentence, whereas now 30 seconds to type something. But initially I was worried that it was going to stop him from speaking, whereas of course it was the exact opposite. We were really lucky because the school kind of tried stuff, but we had and still have the best assistive technology specialist who's
I never shut up.
Yeah, I know. Like now. She's forgotten more than I'll ever know. So she's been fabulous. She's guided us through to show us, and whilst COVID was on, because they got a different communication device. He had a Dynavox, they switched it to a Toby. It was very complicated. And it's trial and error, but it's knowing the things. Whilst we were in COVID, we switched over to this and typed out and did lots of tests. And he's now got so much faster on this. She has there's somebody she sees who auditory, so it scans through on, it was a Dynavox, I don't know what it is now that he has, so he can I'm not sure how he activates the switch, but he can use a communication device. So there's so many ways to use it. And I know UCF has a sort of lab for communication, and to try there, or I don't know. The schools, it's very hit or miss whether you get something that's going to work. They're overworked, and just this is kind of a very specialized area. But UCF, if nothing else, should be a place to try for communication devices.
Alison, is there a best spot, not just in Florida, but nationwide, for adaptive technologies? In other words, is there a centralized organization? If you've got a question, or you've got an idea, or if you have a need that like this, is there a nationwide organization that you can contact?
Not that I know of, but what there is every year in Florida, in Orlando, is ATIA. And I don't even know what the initials stand for, but it's technology. It's assistive technology, something, and they have their all the communication devices, the apps, Prolo Quota for text. You can see all these things. You can see things, and if you go on a Saturday, it's free. And if you go into the exhibit hall, it's always free. I think it's free all week. It's there for about 1 week, usually January, February, each year. Caribe Royale, I think that they usually go to, and I can definitely let you know when they're coming next if anybody's interested, because it's incredible, the stuff that they've got and what they can show you and what is possible. So,
Karen, did that help? You were asked the question, basically, where can you find more information and that sort of thing. Did they help you? I think you're muted, Karen.
Yeah, somewhat, and Daniel also sent me a message there, and I'm thanking you, Daniel, for trying to help me out. But
you are muted once again, I'm afraid.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Alison. But yeah, my nephew can't use his hands, Daniel. I appreciate that, what you said to me. And I just was wondering, is there some kind of way? He did go to school, so I guess if there was something that was available to him, maybe he would have received that from the school. But then again, the services are limited sometimes, with the 3 times a week, and the Hoyer lift that doesn't really work because she can't use it, stuff like that. So maybe that was one of the services that wasn't available to him, or maybe he's not capable of using that service. I don't know.
What I do know, I can throw this in for what it's worth. My wife, Linda, spent her career as a teacher of the visually impaired. And I know that assistive technologies in that field for visually impaired have improved exponentially over her career. Literally, they've gone from the old days where people were using abacuses and handheld devices and that sort of thing. The computer revolution has been absolutely a revolution for them. The ability to communicate more effectively, and I believe this is true for hearing impaired, for visually impaired, for many people. If it weren't for the fact that we have smaller, cheaper, faster computers, many people would have very little ability to communicate. And so today things have gotten an awful lot better. Kat, I think you want to add into that as well, because
yes,
you were a podcaster.
I really do. I'm anxiously waiting. First of all, thank you for your question, Karen. I have a couple of suggestions that might be helpful to you. Number one, reach out to, and I can give you his contact information, a man named Woody Beckham, who actually makes assistive devices for people with low hand function. He himself is a quadriplegic, so that's what got him inspired to start his foundation called the Woody Foundation, and that's what they do. Also, contact your local Center for Independent Living. They have great resources. You can also go on the Christopher Reeve Foundation. They have the Paralysis Center the Paralysis Resource Center, where they give you all these different resources that help people with different needs. It doesn't necessarily have to be a spinal cord injury, but they help you with all different kinds of situations. And so those are the resources that I think you could look into. Also, going back to my friend who had ALS, as his situation progressed, he could no longer use his hands to type. So he actually downloaded something on his phone and his computer that helped him type and communicate by using his eyes. So that might be something else that you want to look into for your nephew. So just those 4 resources I think would be really great to help you. And again, if you want Woody's contact information, I can give it to you in the chat.
That's outstanding. I see that actually, Alison, I'm not sure if you have the capability or the interest in posting your contact information in our chat, but Kat Magnoli has posted her contact, it's very simple. It's katmagnoli@gmail.com in the chat room so that everybody that wants to get in touch with her, if you have more questions or more ideas or some way that you can work together, this is a very good thing. So again, Alison, if you have the capability of putting that into the chat, that would be spectacular. I see we have a question waiting. Somebody's been very patient here, and that's Shannon McHugh. Shannon, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Sure. So it's basically, so I'm here in Brevard County. I'm a person with a disability. I have muscular dystrophy. And my sort of comment and I guess question is kind of pooling all our, our experiences and thoughts and ideas as people with disabilities throughout Florida and sort of coming together and advocating for things like this Medicaid waiver, because it feels like things are very siloed. Like I know Florida is a huge state, Central Florida, South Florida, North Florida, and all that. Is there a way to do that? Is there something that already exists? Because I've been here for 5 years. I'm actually originally from Massachusetts, they have great services for people with disabilities. And I almost kick myself every day for wanting to move here, but the weather is actually better for me. But as far as like my disability, but I had actually better luck in networking for my son who has autism than I've had in networking for myself as an adult with a disability. So it just doesn't seem like, I've been able to find the network or the group of people with disabilities that, where we could all like work together and advocate cross disability spectrum, not just like physical or mental or, anything like that.
Well, Shannon, we are very, very glad that you're here. That's an outstanding question. And one of the things that, again, I think it's important to say to everybody that's here tonight, and that is that you are not alone. It feels like you're alone. It feels like you're fighting a fight. You're sitting at home, maybe you're stuck, maybe in a wheelchair, or somebody has a communication issue. You are not alone. People are thinking of you. There are people that do care deeply and want you to get help and want you to get whatever assistance. They want you to contribute to society, whatever level you're capable of. And that's really, really important. And I would ask both Kat and Alison, do you have any thoughts for Shannon?
So when I first moved here, I didn't know about any of the things that I'm involved with now. And I actually heard from a doctor, he was like, you need to be involved with other people with disabilities. And I was like, well, how do I get started with that? He was like, there's so many things, there's so many resources out there. You just have to Google it. You have to search for what it is that you're looking for. And so my first kind of, step in the right direction was finding an accessible tennis program that was going on back in like 2012. And that was my first kind of introduction to being a part of a network of people with disabilities and just kind of sharing an interest. So I would just suggest to, find out what it is that you're interested in doing, and maybe just Google, a program near you that has that same interest. And I'm sure you'll meet wonderful people.
Interesting enough, by the way, Daniel just sent me a quick message in the chat that says, can you ask her to post her info for me? Now, right now, I see that we have both Kat and Alison who've posted both their information. Daniel, is that what you were looking for? Is that good enough for you, or do you need more information? I see both of their email addresses, and that's probably a good primary contact. Is that good, Daniel? Shannon. Shannon is what Daniel is asking is, Shannon, if you could post your contact information on the chat as well, and he probably would like to be able to communicate with you to help you get set up with an organization he's familiar with. And nothing else, guys. We're networking together right now. We're doing this real time. And even though it may seem like a small group, there are people who are going to watch this when they can on YouTube, and they will be learning from us. So it's very, very important that people can get a hold of you. So Kat Magnoli is KatMagnoli @gmail.com. Kat Magnoli. And then Alison is spelled with one L. So ALISON. Excuse me, your email address is Holmes, HOLMESABROAD @yahoo.com. So it's holmesabroad@yahoo.com. And Daniel, hopefully that Shannon can reach out to you. Daniel, if you could post your contact information, maybe we can get you guys hooked up together. But I know that Kat said that she knows you, and perhaps you guys can network together. So forgive me for trying to work this out to get you guys all connected through our chat. And people on YouTube, I don't think will be able to see the chat, but at least if there we go. Daniel is D, as in the letter Delta, CARVAJAFL @gmail.com. So that's in the chat. So hopefully the 3 or 4 of you guys can look at that and get that contact information. One of the things that helps me is if you have the capability, grab a cell phone and just take a picture of the chat, and then you've got it all. Shannon, was that helpful to you?
Well, can I?
Oh yeah, Alison, you got it.
Thank you very much. Just and I don't know if this is what you mean, Shannon, but for us, we were going around, as I say, doing all the protests, and even Family Cafe, which Kat spoke about. We actually got thrown out of Family Cafe for protesting Rick Scott, because before he came in with their governors summit, she asked, the woman who runs it asked how many people in the room were on the wait list, and over half the room put up their hand. Wow. So I'm thinking now would be a time. Now I understand you can't just say, hey, look, you've got to fix this. But just to say, look, when he came out, I thought if she can ask everybody to put up their hand again, that would show, just to say, we'd really like you to be working on this. No, nothing. So anyway, we pointed it out and got thrown out. But what we then did, we looked for groups. There's the Disability Caucus with the Dems, but Florida Voices for Health is somewhere that's refined us a little, smoothed off our rough edges. No more protesting mostly. And so now going up to Tallahassee to meet with legislators, they did a lot of good, but they have round tables. Last year, they did a round table with Nikki Fried, Charlie Crist, and Annette Tadeo. Funnily enough, Ron DeSantis was invited but didn't show up. So they are very active on this. They're trying to brainstorm ways to get the wait list lowered. So they are always story banking as well to get it out. They're also working on Medicaid expansion. That's a big focus of theirs, and petition gathering next year. So if they don't know the answer to something, they usually know somebody who does. So they're a really, really good group. If that's sort of the direction you're looking in. And
Can you say the name of that group and where they are, if you could locate them on the web?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chats then. Is Florida Voices for Health is the name of the group.
Florida Voices for Health.
Yep.
And that's a statewide organization. And
Yes.
while I'm sorry to be talking to you while you're off screen there, but the one of the questions that I wonder about is United Way. It's been around for a long time and they do a lot of good work for a lot of different people, but I know that they've got their problems too. But have you had success with the United Way?
We haven't, no. So I'm just trying to look up their website.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to let you work on that so that you can do the entry there for us. Kat, do you have an experience with United Way?
It's funny that you mentioned the United Way. I actually know the person that started the United Way. His name is Dave Lawrence, and he is a fierce advocate for inclusion and for children. And so I know someone personally who's actually working within the realm of United Way. I don't know if she's actually in the organization or kind of like partnered with it. And she's currently working for the mental health department, helping people who come in for services deal with their mental health issues. And she herself is spinal cord injury. So it's pretty inspiring that she's helping others live, a life of mental health wellness.
Well, one of the greatest ways to learn and to connect is by helping other people, by reaching out and doing what you can to help folks in need. Shannon, did we answer your question? I'm not sure if what we did.
Yes, that was great. The Florida Voices for Health, that's really good. And there are definitely a lot of resources. It's just like I said, like they're just all like disconnected. And especially I think here in Brevard County, there's not a lot of services. So it's, maybe more in the Orlando area or like Miami or something, but Brevard County is definitely, or the Space Coast, it's like an entity of its own. But I didn't get Daniel's email because for some reason I can't see it on my chat, and I can't write on it either. So
I'll tell you what, I'm going to read it out loud if I can. Can you write it down if I read it? I'm going to do this one more time.
Sure.
I might have messed it up the last time I did it. It's D as in Delta, C A R V as in Victor, A J A L F L at gmail.com.
Okay.
And hopefully that will be helpful. Hopefully you
All
can
right.
connect
Thank
that
you,
way.
Daniel.
And
Another thing, Shannon, that I just want to say to you is, like I said, if you can't find what you're looking for in order to network, maybe that's a sign that you yourself could start a program. I feel like you're, a very passionate person. Like you said, you find services for your son. But if you can't find what you're looking for yourself, maybe advocate to start a program, whatever it is that you want to do in order to meet people. I really believe that you could do it yourself. You could, fundraise and start your own program.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I was an advocate in Massachusetts. I was on the Massachusetts Developmental Disabilities Council, but it seems like it's hard to get in here, yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I have connections with the Florida Developmental Disability Council. If you'd like, I can, connect you with them as well.
And
Okay.
Kat, if I might speak up, I know that Kat used to have a podcast, and I think that Kat, you want to get back into the podcasting game, and the idea, the ability to maybe bring a voice and maybe a place where people can get together, and maybe your podcast might be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
I tell you what, listening to Shannon talk, she's got a particularly clear connection. I'm not sure exactly why. She sounds like her voice would be very good. In fact, everybody that's on this event tonight, and including Daniel and Shannon and our speakers and JJ, would probably be really interesting as part of a podcast. What an interesting idea.
That would
That
be great. Shannon, if you want to be my co-host, that'd be cool.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
There's also the ARC of Florida, which they hold monthly meetings. I don't have any of the details, but if your contact information is in there, I can send it to you. They've got one, I'm confused on my days, next week, and they have a rep who has a child with disabilities who'll be speaking. And some of these things, some meetings you get a lot from, some you don't, but I'm gonna have to run and get my charger, or else my thing is gonna go dead. So I will.
Okay. That's no problem. We do not want you to lose power. That's very good. Shannon, I don't know if you would like to be able to enter your contact information as well in the chat. It's completely up to you for your own privacy if you want to do that or not. But to help share that with the other speakers.
I would love to. I'm just trying to figure out how to do that.
You should be able to find a small window that says chat. And on a laptop, it's on the bottom. On a phone or an iPad, it might be in some other location, but there's a little it looks like a little bubble window and the word chat next to it, and just click that. It opens the chat window, and then you can type in there if that's something you can do. Do we have any other questions, by the way? I'm looking forward to handling another question. We just have a few more minutes left. It'd be really great to have another question for our wonderful group of people here. Shannon, your hand is still up, and I suspect you don't want it to be. There we go. And Alison's getting her power set up. Do we have any other questions for our wonderful group tonight? Alison, I'm glad that you're hooked back up again, because we're about to, I see Bonnie Edith. Bonnie, you had your hand up before. Now you're back again. Bonnie, please ask your question, and you have 3 minutes to make your question.
I just want to, I had taken my hand down because I think I got the answer, which is basically that the money is there for these, what are they called? The waivers. The money from the federal government is there. The state government has all kinds of money. There's no excuse for this, right? Am I right about this? It's there. All they need to do is do it. But they...
Yeah, absolutely. That they maybe don't give toll road relief for heavy users. They're doing, people who I think use toll roads more than 30 times each month. I mean, and they have got so much money that they don't know what to do with it. This education, the scholarships, I mean, without any thought it was passed, and yet they'll leave people on the wait list. So yeah, Jeb Bush did it. There's nothing about how Jeb Bush bankrupted the state when he
the governor and the legislature are out of touch.
There's nothing about him ever bankrupting the state with what he did. It's just there's no energy to act on it because they would rather put it to flying people from Texas to California.
That
Any
is very,
comfort,
very
Allison, they don't want to use the money to help house the unhoused. They don't want to use it to protect our environment. They just have their own little pet ideas, which are totally inappropriate. Thank you. I just wanted to be sure I had my answer there.
When your governor is running for president, from literally the day that he takes office, you find yourself in a very difficult situation. It strikes me that somebody who's running for president might want to build a constituency, perhaps, of people who he might have helped, and he could use that on a nationwide basis. But this particular candidate for president doesn't seem to see it that way. Kat, I see your hands up.
Yes. So Bonnie, thank you for your question. I think it's just exactly what we're talking about. And in my opinion, there is a lack of empathy and knowledge of the disability community within those that are sitting in power right now. And I think that, and I was going to save this for the end, but my call to action really is this, that we all need to follow in the footsteps of the great Judith Heumann and be fierce people with disabilities and just go out there and fight for our rights and fight for just our basic needs to be met. Because unless, and something that I've noticed throughout my life is that unless you know someone in this situation of living with a disability, or you yourself have a disability, you don't understand what this entails. You don't understand the everyday life and the struggles and the obstacles and so forth. So unless we go out there and we educate people, nothing is going to change. So my call to action is really this. It can't just fall on the disability community, though. Everyone that's on this call right now, whether you have a disability or not, you should go out there and tell people about this issue and just educate society every day or as often as possible to get change to actually happen.
And I think it's imperative for all of us to be willing to pick up the phone or to your keyboard or write a letter. And we often take our local representatives for granted. Figure out who your local senator is, your state senator. Figure out who your local state representative is. Their offices are usually very close to your home. They're usually closer anyway than trying to find your federal senator, your federal representative. In other words, pressure, phone calls, it makes a difference. It really does. Incidentally, I see that our chat window should be more open now. Shannon, I know that you wanted to enter some data. Maybe it should be available to you now if you try again. A different Shannon, actually Shannon Roberts, just sent a chat for everyone that says that she thinks this is a great program. Shannon is a past president of the SCPA. And also a past congressional candidate. She suggests that perhaps a legislative advocate such as Anna Escamati would be a person who could champion this issue. Anna, of course, is a great hero for us here on the Space Coast, as she is over in Orlando, a person who actually will take your call, will take action to defend people who need help, somebody who I have a big deal of respect for, and Anna Escamani might be a great contact person. But anyway, Kat, you gave us your action item, and I'm going to ask you, can you say that again very quickly? Quick action item in maybe one sentence.
Educate, 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 educate. You need to go out and talk to people, tell them everything that you learned from this call today, and tell everyone what your life experience is, because the more you tell people your story or another person's story, the more they'll understand how dire of a situation this is, and real change can be made once people understand. When I was Miss Wheelchair Florida, I wanted to put mats on the beach, and my mayor didn't understand why I couldn't go to the beach without the mat. But when I educated him on it, he was like, thank you. I can't do what I don't understand. So that's my point. You just got to go out there and fight fiercely, like the great Judith Heumann said, and just real change can happen when we work together.
That's very, very, very inspirational. JJ, Alison, do you have an action item for us?
Funnily enough, we do. What you're saying, because when I first moved to this country, I met an American and married him. I'm now an American too, but you know, I moved over here, and I knew nothing about who everybody was, and then gradually learned the president, the speaker, But it's the state. They're the ones who really do affect your life. They're the ones who, and those are the ones that it took me longer to learn. And these delegation meetings, to me, we are going to plot them this year like nobody's business, and we're going to go around and we're going to make sure, because we tried to meet with Paul Renner, Speaker of the House, and could not get a meeting with him. So we're going to go to his delegation meeting and say there, it is such an opportunity to have them all lined up there. They're like hostages sitting there, and they have to listen for those 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It really is. It's something that I didn't even know that they did until recently. And now we're going to use that. We also, Florida Voices for Health, I would encourage anybody to join, to work with them. And if Space Coast Progressives were looking for a meeting idea next year, once they get the ballot initiative going, because they're going to start it next year for Medicaid expansion. I know like Scott Darius would be really good coming in to explain how important, I mean, for people with disabilities and for able-bodied people like myself, because my husband's self-employed and in the coverage gap. So it's such a good group who they're fighting for sort of better dental care as well for people. So that's another one. And then if our plan comes to fruition for the homeless statement that he's going to do, if anybody would like to amplify that on social media, I know JJ would be very grateful, because we would like to get that as much publicity, because as you say, somebody who's running for president shouldn't be having 22,400 and whatever people languishing for decades on a wait list, and then be going around pointing fingers at people in other states about where they're going wrong. So you know, he needs to do some looking at his own state first before running around and pointing out what everybody else is doing wrong. So that's for us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll tell you what, this has been a wonderful night for us all to learn, to be motivated, hopefully to bring some folks together. Daniel just put a note on the chat, and he says we should do this every month. Well, I wish we had that capability. You know, we're still here in the Zoom world, which for many people is impersonal and disconnects us. But I can tell you this, and that is that Zoom gives us the opportunity to bring in people who are not here in Brevard County. We have speakers from all around the state. We are very, very, very lucky to have Alison Holmes, Katherine, Magnoli, JJ Holmes, all of our guests tonight, all of you that came and joined us. I am very thankful. Everybody in this call should give everybody. In fact, we can bring you up perhaps off of mute, and maybe we can actually do this if we can unmute everybody. And I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do that, but let everybody in. Maybe unmute yourself if you have the capability. Unmute yourself. Let's give everybody a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was an amazing. And Zoom really does help us communicate better at times. And I'm so thankful that we're able to do this. I would like to remind everybody that the Space Coast Progressive Alliance does indeed have an event next month. Again, as Karen was saying, it's going to be about rewriting Black history and how there are forces who are trying to erase Black history, and we need to all be paying attention. I think we all need to be pushing back against that. That will be Thursday, August 3rd, the first Thursday in August, back here. And if you have not yet been to our website, please take a look, www.scpaflorida.com. Go check it out. Thanks to everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. And I do hope that you, again, going back to the beginning, have had a wonderful Independence Day. It is our nation's 247th birthday. Hopefully we can make our country better than it is today. Thanks to all of you. Have a beautiful night. We'll see you next month, everybody. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.